The early signing period is almost here, and let's hope that Fran Brown can land two of these four recruits we're going to talk about.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And folks, on today's show, we are doing a mini podcast, an early signing period preview. We're going to talk about four prospects that you need to keep your eye on, and hopefully Syracuse football head coach Fran Brown can land at least two of these four recruits. Now, I'm going to spoil one of them. We're going to talk about him later, but a four-star is already locked in. So that's why I'm saying, can Fran Brown land two? Because one of them is already in the boat. In case you guys don't know, the early signing period across all of college football begins tomorrow, December 4th, and it runs for a couple days until Friday, December 6th. If you are a recruit and they don't sign during the National Letter of Intent days, the early signing period, then they have to wait all the way until February when it reopens February 5th to April 1st, 2025. There are a lot of recruits that we can talk about here on Locked On Syracuse. Over 30 are committed to Syracuse right now, at least verbally committed. But these are four guys who are elites that I want to draw your attention to. The first one that we're going to talk about is Javion Hilson, 6'5", 245-pound edge rusher from Florida. He is a Rivals 5-star recruit. That's right, a 5-star recruit. And he ranks anywhere between the 16th and the 76th best player in the country. His top four, along with Syracuse is in the top four, are Texas, Texas A&M, and Pitt, although he did recently take visits to Missouri and Michigan, so it's kind of tough to gauge his recruitment. But overall, this is a big-time fish. And if Syracuse football can land a 5-star in 2025, that would be massive for the program, and it would be certainly a statement from Fran Brown. He's made a lot of statements. This might be his biggest one on the recruiting trail. I believe he is announcing tomorrow. I found it on 24/7 Sports. It says he's announcing tomorrow, so hopefully that is the case. He changes everything if he were to commit to Syracuse. He's probably a day one starter for the Orange. He probably is. He could be a one-for-one replacement for Fadil Diggs. And if he is a one-for-one replacement for Fadil Diggs, the outstanding transfer from Texas A&M last year, came over to Syracuse, had 7.5 sacks, led the Orange. Now he's out of eligibility. If he can replace him one-for-one, then Syracuse defensive line is pretty much set. That eliminates really that need in the transfer portal, that probable need that we talked about on yesterday's full podcast going over transfer portal needs. They can kind of brush the defensive line away a little bit, which is huge. Defensive linemen, particularly in the transfer portal, are really valuable and they're really pricey. So if you don't really need one, that's a big advantage, especially for a school like Syracuse, when they're certainly in the quarterback market, which is obviously going to be the most expensive in NIL money to get. So Javion Hilson is probably the most important recruit that you need to watch. Not only is he the best, he's the most important, because if he can be a one-for-one replacement for Fadil Diggs, if he were to come to Syracuse, changes everything. They don't really need to touch defensive line. Let's talk about another player who could be a future replacement. So he's not one-for-one yet, but he could be a one-for-one going forward. And that is Winston Watkins, a 5'10", 175-pound wide receiver from Florida. He is a near consensus 4-star recruit. Actually, on Rivals a few months ago, he was a 5-star recruit, but now he's a 4-star recruit over there. He has Syracuse in his top 8, along with, it's an elite list of schools. They're ready for it. Colorado, Alabama, Penn State, Indiana, Ole Miss, South Carolina, and Georgia. Those are the 7 schools plus Syracuse in his top 8. This is official. We know it from his mouth. He's announcing tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern. So get ready to watch for Winston Watkins' commitment announcement where he's going to sign. I don't see too much analyst buzz out there as far as where he's going to go, except for one. National recruiting expert over at Rivals, John Garcia, he believes the unofficial top 2 are Ole Miss and Indiana, with Ole Miss being the favorite. But that's it. So I would say that Syracuse does have an outside chance of landing a guy like Winston Watkins. And let's say he does choose Syracuse. Like, let's be optimistic, okay? Winston Watkins, congratulations. You are a member of the Syracuse Orange. What can you expect? Well, this is an important one because he is the Trebor Pena replacement. Not for this season, but for 2026. When Trebor Pena is out of eligibility, Winston Watkins can be the starting slot receiver for Syracuse. Why do I say that? His scouting report over on 24/7 Sports, I'm going to paraphrase it for you, but they basically call him a really good slot receiver. That's what he is. He's great catch and run, great in the open field. He's twitchy. That's his scouting report. Does that remind you of anyone? It's Trebor Pena, who's currently Syracuse's slot receiver. So getting a guy like Winston Watkins, while I don't think it would have a huge impact for the upcoming season, it will have an impact 2026 and beyond because he would probably be the starting slot receiver come 2026 opening day. So those are just 2 prospects. We talked about Javion Hilson, how he changes the complexion of the defensive line. And then Winston Watkins, who, while it doesn't impact the roster for this season coming up, he does impact the roster for 2026 if he were to commit. Now, coming up, we're going to talk about another prospect that you have to keep your eye on. And then we're going to get to the one guy who's actually locked in out of these group of 4 players. That's why I keep saying, can Fran Brown land 2? Because he's already got 1. Can he land 2? That's coming up next on Locked On Syracuse. Obviously, with the transfer portal and National Signing Day coming up, we're talking a lot of football here on Locked On Syracuse, but basketball season is in full swing, whether it's the NBA or college, even Syracuse basketball. Going to games is always exciting, and the way I get tickets for games is by using Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And my favorite feature is the curated deals. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. What time is it? Game Time. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Syracuse football's regular season over-under for this season was 7.5 wins. The Orange finished 9-3, so congrats to those who bet the over. Now, Syracuse doesn't necessarily count for the over-under, but it is an honor and pride type thing where Syracuse does try for its 10th win of the season in the bowl game and has not been announced yet, but when it is announced, you will hear about it here on Locked On Syracuse, and you'll also hear about those betting odds. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Here are 2 more prospects to keep an eye on for the early national signing period in college football. It runs from December 4th, which is tomorrow, to Friday, December 6th. We've already talked about Javion Hilson and Winston Watkins. Now let's get to the third guy, and later on we're going to talk about the guy who's already locked in. The third guy, not locked in, Dawayne Galloway, 6 foot, 170-pound corner from Ohio, a near consensus 4-star recruit, an ESPN top 300 player. He was originally committed to Purdue, but Purdue obviously had a terrible season, so everyone seems to be leaving from there. More on that in a moment. But he had Syracuse originally, I believe, in his top 12. It might have been even higher than that, but that was the best I could find was top 12. So there's got to be something there. He decommitted from Purdue in early October. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning his name is because on tomorrow's show, I think we're going to talk. I'm going to say I think because, breaking news can obviously happen. It changes everything in the transfer portal, right? But I think tomorrow we're going to talk about his brother a little bit. His brother is a tight end also in the transfer portal. So I don't want to give away too much, but I think it's fair to assume that those two might be a package deal. So keep your eye on a guy like Dawayne Galloway. And by the way, of that tight end that's in the portal, that's the brother of Dawayne Galloway. I believe Syracuse has reached out to said player. That's why I'm mentioning this guy's name right now. Maybe there's some sort of inculation. I don't have any sourcing on it, but maybe there's something there. Maybe there's smoke. That's how I feel about it. I don't have sourcing. That's just my opinion. I checked for an announcement date on Dawayne Galloway. I did not find one. So it is possible he does not announce where he's signing during the early signing period, which means we might have to wait till February to get a conclusion on this. But I just want you to keep your eye on a guy like Dawayne Galloway, a 4-star corner from Ohio. His brother is in the transfer portal. Syracuse reached out to said brother. If Syracuse can land the brother or they can land the recruit, then they might get the other. You catch my drift here? So that's Dawayne Galloway, the corner from Ohio, 4-star player. And finally, we get to the guy that is locked in, and we have talked about him a lot here on Locked On Syracuse. There are plenty of episodes going over him. And that is Demetres Samuel Jr., 6'2", 180-pound safety from Florida, a consensus 4-star recruit, and currently by far and away the best recruit in Syracuse's 2025 class. And of course, the good news is that he's a lock. He is confirmed on X that he is signing with Syracuse tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern. There's no decision. There's no flip that is expected. He is signing with Syracuse, barring something crazy. Barring something completely unforeseen, because he on X confirmed he's signing with Syracuse. I don't think there's going to be any other hats on the table other than the orange, so that's good news for us. With Elijah Clark out of eligibility, safety Elijah Clark, there's certainly a path to playing time for Demetres Samuel as a true freshman. We talked about it on yesterday's podcast about it, but they still might want to bring in a safety in the transfer portal anyway. It's just probably not the most pressing need that you got a guy like Demetres Samuel signing with Syracuse. But I just also want to credit the staff here for getting a kid like Demetres Samuel, because he was committed to Syracuse, I believe, last April. Then he flipped over the summer to Florida. And then Syracuse was able to get him back. And think about where Florida is for just a moment here. Florida is on a recruiting. They're on a recruiting roll. They're on fire right now with their recruiting. But Syracuse was able to keep Demetres Samuel in their class, barring something completely unforeseen. So thank you for Fran Brown, and thank you to the rest of this coaching staff for keeping a guy like Demetres Samuel. Now, can they land another one is the question. You got a blue chipper in Demetres Samuel. Can you land Dawayne Galloway? Can you land a Winston Watkins? Can you even get a guy like Javion Hilson? That is the question going forward here for the early signing period. As far as what is coming up on the podcast going forward, tonight, Syracuse basketball plays at Tennessee at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. ACC, SEC challenge. It's going to be a real tough one for Syracuse, but win, lose, or draw, Jackson Holzer, that's myself, is going to be here on Locked On Syracuse, giving you a breakdown of the game. Hopefully, it's after a monumental upset by Syracuse and they can kind of get themselves back in the tournament conversation. That's coming up later tonight. As far as what is coming up on the podcast in the coming days, this is what I have planned. Wednesday, we're going to talk about one particular player that Syracuse needs to pursue in the transfer portal. That's Javion Galloway, the brother of Dawayne Galloway. That's going to come up on Wednesday. Also, plenty of quarterback episodes, signing day reactions if anything big happens. So that's what's coming up on the Locked On Syracuse podcast going forward. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this video, click that like button. If you really liked it, subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications so you know right away when I'm dropping the next podcast. And I will see you all later tonight.